Inbreeding, the mating of closely related individuals, increases the expression of harmful recessive genes. When similar gene pools reproduce, their offspring are more likely to inherit the same detrimental genes from both parents. Consequently, inbred populations often exhibit decreased biological fitness, known as inbreeding depression. This manifests as reduced fertility, higher juvenile mortality, and increased disease susceptibility. To make it simple for you, it means do not sleep with your cousin, no matter how hot she is. And if you do, use protection. We don't need three-legged Joes running around asking for candy on the street. By the end of today's documentary, we've learned how incest can make your skin turn blue. Yes, you heard it. Like a blueberry. No kidding. And even learned how sometimes even the best of us can't resist the irresistible. Like Charles Darwin, who apparently couldn't say no to his cousin Mary's sweet cheeks and ended up marrying her instead. And much more fun and interesting stuff. Inbreeding reduces genetic diversity, making populations more vulnerable to environmental changes and diseases. Genetic diversity is essential for adaptation and survival. Without it, populations cannot effectively respond to new selective pressures such as diseases or habitat changes. Studies on animal populations, like cheetahs, which have low genetic diversity due to historical bottlenecks, demonstrate how inbreeding can threaten species survival by reducing their ability to withstand environmental pressures. Inbreeding's genetic consequences impact entire populations over generations. Reduced genetic diversity limits adaptability to environmental changes, increasing extinction risks. Inbred zoo animals often struggle with reintroduction into the wild due to insufficient genetic variability for new challenges. In humans, isolated inbred communities may face higher rates of genetic disorders like cystic fibrosis or Tay-Sachs disease, owing to the greater chance of inheriting identical recessive genes. Geneticists study these populations to understand genetic inheritance patterns and implications. Mitigating inbreeding effects involves introducing new genetic material through outcrossing, enhancing genetic diversity, and population resilience. Conservation biology uses these methods to protect endangered species. Another take is the Westermark effect, named after Finnish anthropologist Edvard Westermark, which is a psychological hypothesis suggesting individuals raised together in early childhood develop a natural aversion to sexual attraction towards each other. Introduced in Westermark's 1891 book, The History of Human Marriage, it implies that close domestic proximity during early childhood triggers this aversion, preventing inbreeding. Various studies support this phenomenon, especially among children raised in communal settings, like Israeli kibbutzim, and biological siblings reared together. Arthur Wolf's study on minor marriages in China, where children were betrothed and raised together, showed significantly lower marriage success and sexual attraction. The Westermark effect contrasts with Freud's Oedipus complex and has broad implications, from understanding human mate selection to informing social and cultural practices around childhood upbringing. Evolutionary psychology explores deeply how natural selection shapes behavior. Kin selection theory, introduced by British biologist W.D. Hamilton in 1964, posits that individuals assist relatives to ensure the survival of shared genes. Hamilton emphasized inclusive fitness, the impact an individual has on spreading its genes through offspring and aiding relatives, as crucial in evolution. Kin selection theory elucidates altruistic behaviors in animals. For instance, worker bees forego reproduction to help the queen produce more offspring, benefiting their shared genetic code. The theory also applies to human behavior. Studies indicate people are more likely to help siblings than distant relatives or strangers. Family bonds significantly influence decisions about resource distribution and care. Kin selection can shape social structures. In many societies, extended families collaborate in child rearing and resource sharing, reflecting evolutionary advantages. But rare genetic disorders linked to incest arise from the limited gene pool within closely related individuals. Incest heightens the risk of genetic disorders by increasing the likelihood that both parents carry the same recessive genes. One example is the Habsburg jaw, a distinctive facial deformity in the Habsburg royal family, resulting from generations of intermarriage. Another is hemophilia B, or royal disease, prevalent in European royal families who often married within their lineage. Children from incestuous relationships have a significantly higher probability of inheriting autosomal recessive disorders like sickle cell anemia and Tay-Sachs disease. One notable case is the Blue people of Kentucky, a family with methemoglobinemia, causing their skin to appear blue. This rare condition was worsened by interfamily marriages in the isolated Appalachian region. Methemoglobinemia is an autosomal recessive disorder caused by a deficiency in the enzyme converting methemoglobin back to hemoglobin, thus turning your skin blue like a blueberry. Somewhat reminds me of Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. Another rare condition linked to incest is xeroderma pigmentosum, making skin extremely sensitive to UV rays and increasing skin cancer risk. This disease has a higher incidence in regions with consanguineous marriages, like some Middle Eastern communities. Genetic isolation due to incest has also led to clusters of disorders, such as Ellis-Van Creveld syndrome among the Old Order Amish in Pennsylvania, resulting in polydactyly, short stature, and heart defects. Hunter-gatherer societies developed distinct cultural norms, including the prohibition of incest, crucial for group survival and social cohesion, avoiding genetic risks like birth defects. Anthropological studies reveal that hunter-gatherers established taboos against incest to avoid these biological consequences. This rule became fundamental to community organization and kinship structures. It also played a vital role in forming alliances with other groups, promoting genetic diversity and resource sharing. By ensuring members sought partners outside their immediate family, societies reduced genetic disorder risks and maintained healthier populations. Rituals, myths, and stories often reinforce these norms, embedding anti-incest sentiments deeply within their culture. These norms helped hunter-gatherers thrive in various environments despite numerous challenges. Kinship and marriage rules among early human groups were crucial for social organization and survival. Organized into small bands or tribes, these societies relied on kinship systems to form alliances and maintain cohesion. Kinship determined roles, inheritance rights, and responsibilities within the group. These connections were patrilineal, matrilineal, or bilateral, depending on the society. Marriage rules ensured genetic diversity and forged intergroup alliances. Exogamy, marrying outside one's group, minimized inbreeding and fostered unity with neighbors. Polygyny, where a man had multiple wives, was common in resource-rich societies, while monogamy prevailed in resource-scarce environments. Strict rules and ceremonies governed marriage practices, ensuring legitimacy and social acceptance. Detailed kinship terminology identified and addressed relatives by specific terms, vital for maintaining the structure and functions of early human groups. But many upcoming ancient civilizations adopted practices that seem strange to modern societies and seem to early humans as well. One such practice was royal incest. Seen in cultures like ancient Egypt and the Chinese Empire. In ancient China, incest among ruling elites was common. Royal bloodlines were preserved through pure lineage, often resulting in marriages between siblings and close relatives. The Shang dynasty, spanning from 1600 to 1046 BC, endorsed such unions to maintain their divine mandate and strengthen rulers' power. Ancient Chinese rulers often believed in a divine right to rule, granted by the heavens. This belief included the notion that incestuous unions would help maintain divine favor. Emperors and kings viewed themselves as semi-divine figures whose marriages could influence their relationship with the gods. For example, Emperor Qin Shi Huang, who ruled from 221 to 210 BC, reputedly had several consorts from within his family, believing it would secure his status and power. Qin dynasty court records indicate such marriages were encouraged to ensure the emperor remained in the gods' good graces. It was thought that divine favor could be transferred through bloodlines, and incest was a way to keep this divine influence within the ruling family. This intertwining of religion and marriage legitimized incestuous practices, embedding them into the cultural and political frameworks of ancient Chinese society. Historical texts like oracle bones reveal numerous instances of royal siblings marrying. The Zhou dynasty, from 1046 to 256 BC, also arranged marriages between cousins to preserve lineage sanctity. These elite practices influenced broader social norms, ensuring the continuity of familial wealth and power through marital unions. Here, incest was also deeply influenced by the belief in ancestral spirits. Ancestor worship required maintaining pure, unbroken family lines. Incestuous marriages were seen as a way to keep the family strong and unified, thus honoring ancestors. During the Han Dynasty, from 206 BC to 220 AD, emperors and nobles often married within their family to consolidate power and resources. Empress Luji married her niece to her son to strengthen her authority. Commoners sometimes emulated the elite's marital behaviors. Legal texts like the Han Code reveal that although incest was technically illegal for commoners, it was often overlooked, especially if the family had high social standing or royal ties. The social and political benefits frequently outweighed moral and legal concerns. Marriages among close relatives were strategic, aimed at retaining power and preserving wealth within a limited circle. This practice ensured valuable resources like land, titles, and influence stayed within the family. During the Warring States period, from 475 to 221 BC, the need for strong familial alliances intensified. Powerful families almost always married their children to close relatives to fortify political positions. Records from this period show that such practices were accepted and encouraged to ensure political stability and economic prosperity. Rare opposition to incestuous marriages was usually driven by external political agendas rather than internal ethical concerns. Incestuous practices profoundly impacted Chinese history and society. These marriages aimed to consolidate political power and maintain divine favor, but led to genetic issues and decreased diversity. Historical accounts indicate certain ruling families suffered hereditary conditions that weakened their rule. Despite these drawbacks, incest remained normalized in noble and royal circles for centuries. Confucian texts hinted at the complexities of such practices, but the emphasis on family loyalty and reverence for ancestors overshadowed the drawbacks. Over time, Chinese society shifted away from these practices. Later emperors introduced reforms to discourage incestuous marriages, influenced by the need for a healthier, more stable society. By the Ming and Qing dynasties, the practice had largely diminished. Next up, ancient Mesopotamia, the cradle of civilization, which had intricate social and familial structures. Rulers of Uruk engaged in brother-sister marriages, documented in cuneiform tablets outlining marital traditions. These unions reinforced political alliances and ensured offspring legitimacy. Mesopotamia's detailed records, including the Code of Hammurabi, provide valuable insights into the prevalence and regulation of incest. Deities like Inanna and Dumuzi, depicted in mythological texts as engaging in incestuous relationships, further justified human imitation of divine behaviors. The royal family of Akkad exemplifies early dynastic practices. Sargon of Akkad, who founded one of history's first empires, allegedly had his children marry each other to ensure dynastic continuity. These practices were controversial. Some ancient texts laud the purity and strength of the royal bloodline, while others hint at discord and conflict from such unions. Priestly authorities often conducted these marriages, drawing divine parallels. High-ranking officials sometimes adopted similar customs. The prevalence of incestuous marriages among the elite maintained a homogeneous ruling class, but raised concerns about genetic diversity and societal health. Records from Mari suggest the practice was more widespread than believed. Cuneiform tablets and correspondences detail family trees and marriage alliances. Myths and religious practices intertwined with these customs, offering divine endorsement or warnings. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a cornerstone of Mesopotamian literature, subtly addresses this topic. Gilgamesh, a part god and part human king, had a complex relationship with the goddess Ishtar, hinting at divine tribal norms influencing human practices. Another notable narrative is the Enuma Elish, the Babylonian creation myth, which describes the god Marduk's rise to supremacy, involving relationships that modern eyes might see as incestuous, offering divine precedent for human behavior. The deity Enki was known for incestuous acts with multiple family members in various myths. These intertwined myths and societal customs provided a theological foundation that blurred the lines between divine acts and human behavior. Archaeological findings, such as statues and carvings, often depict these gods in family groups, reinforcing the divine nature of these relationships. Given the religious influence in Mesopotamian daily life, such depictions likely normalized incestuous relationships among certain societal classes. Cuneiform tablets also reinforce these norms with detailed mythological narratives. Incest in ancient Mesopotamia, though taboo today, was rooted in cultural and religious ideologies to maintain divine favor and socio-political stability. Despite risks like genetic defects and family strife, the perceived benefits often outweighed concerns, similarly to ancient China. Textual records, legal codes, and mythological narratives reveal a society where incestuous relationships were regular, governed by strict laws and cultural expectations. Marriages were strategically planned to retain wealth and power within families. Priests and religious leaders endorsed these unions, believing they embodied the will of the gods. As external influences and evolving moral perspectives entered Mesopotamia, the practice faced scrutiny and decline, though it left an indelible mark on the historical record. Extricating moral judgment from understanding historical practices allows for a richer, more nuanced view of Mesopotamian society. But now, incest, or mating between closely related individuals, occurs in many animal species and has intrigued scientists due to its apparent evolutionary disadvantages. One might assume incest leads to harmful genetic consequences, yet it persists in nature, indicating underlying benefits. You're correct. We're looking into incest in Animal Kingdom next, and it's going to be wilder than ever. Some animal populations are geographically isolated, limiting mate choices and resulting in inbreeding, as seen in the Galapagos Islands finches. These finches, famously studied by Charles Darwin, often mate within their small groups, preserving genetic traits that aid their survival. In social insect colonies like ants, bees, and termites, incest is surprisingly common. Queen ants and bees frequently mate with siblings to efficiently propagate their genetic material, ensuring the rapid establishment of new colonies and maintaining genetic consistency crucial for cooperation and survival. In crowded or isolated environments, inbreeding can also prevent the dilution of advantageous traits. While incest might seem counterproductive, its prevalence in the animal kingdom suggests a complex balance between risks and evolutionary benefits that merits further study. Inbreeding in animals can highlight both positive and negative genetic traits. In some wolf packs, alpha pairs may mate with close relatives to reinforce beneficial traits like strength, endurance, or hunting skills, essential for survival in harsh environments. However, negative consequences, such as inbreeding depression, can result in reduced fertility, lower birth rates, or increased disease vulnerability. Some species manage to minimize these risks. Naked mole rats, living in subterranean colonies, often engage in close-kin mating, but show a low occurrence of inbreeding depression. Their genetic mechanisms may allow them to eliminate harmful genes over generations. Certain amphibians and reptiles, like some toads and lizards, have adapted to environments where mates are scarce by regularly inbreeding without significant detrimental effects. Understanding these patterns and outcomes provides insights into the adaptive strategies species use to cope with the genetic risks of inbreeding. Birds in small island populations exhibit intriguing inbreeding behaviors. The island scrub jay of Santa Cruz Island often mates with close kin to preserve adaptive traits essential for survival. In isolated environments, finding unrelated mates is difficult, so incest helps maintain the genetic pool. Similarly, the Hawaiian crow, or alala, resorts to inbreeding to prevent genetic diversity loss. Guppy populations in Trinidad's rivers often consist of closely related individuals and inbreed to sustain their numbers when isolated by environmental barriers like waterfalls. Studies suggest female guppies can recognize and avoid mating with close relatives unless no other options exist. In some primate species, such as chimpanzees and gorillas, males may mate with close relatives. In a chimpanzee community, males often stay in their natal groups, leading to potential incestuous pairings. Female chimpanzees avoid inbreeding by transferring to different groups, balancing inbreeding risks. In gorillas, dominant silverbacks may mate with closely related females within their group. Genetic diversity in gorilla groups is managed by occasional migrations between groups, reducing inbreeding depression. In ring-tailed lemurs, males may inbreed to maintain social structures within their troops, especially with limited mate options. And lastly, for the animal kingdom, inbreeding is also common among rodents like mice and rats in isolated or overcrowded environments. These rodents have mechanisms to cope, such as polyandry, where females mate with multiple males to boost offspring genetic diversity. Wow, what a ride through incest that was. But there's no stopping now, as we're fast-forwarding into a more mystical incest experience, if one might say so. The origins of incestuous practices in ancient Siberian shaman societies are complex. Shamanism, centered on nature and ancestral spirits, was prevalent. Incestuous relationships were often justified by spiritual beliefs. Shamans, spiritual leaders, claimed a divine connection and used this as a rationale. The practice was tied to concepts of purity and concentration of spiritual power within bloodlines. Marriages between siblings or close relatives were believed to strengthen the shaman's power, as purity of the bloodline was thought to fortify spiritual prowess. In many tribes, shamans wielded significant influence, becoming both spiritual and political leaders. The consolidation of power within families was strategic. Among the Yakuts, a shaman's efficacy was linked to lineage and purity. Marrying within the family safeguarded and enhanced spiritual capabilities. Elder shamans or tribal leaders often orchestrated these marriages, understanding their community's spiritual needs. Rituals and ceremonies accompanied these unions, adding spiritual significance. Over time, these practices became institutionalized, symbolizing both spiritual power preservation and political stability. Shamans held that diluted bloodlines weakened spiritual connections, endangering the tribe's well-being. This pervasive ideology led to younger members being taught the importance of such unions early on. Clan records and oral histories reveal a complex societal structure where spirituality and bloodline purity were intertwined. And now, the good old ancient Egyptian civilization, renowned for its monumental architecture and rich mythology, which had some real unique social customs. One of these complex customs, as you might have guessed, was the practice of incestuous marriages within royal and sometimes even common families. These unions were strategic for royalty. Pharaohs often married close relatives, including siblings and half-siblings, to preserve the royal bloodline's purity. The earliest recorded instance of royal incest dates back to the First Dynasty, around 3000 BC. This practice was believed to ensure the pharaoh's divine status, as he was considered a living god on earth. By maintaining a pure lineage, the pharaoh's divine nature was thought to remain untainted. This custom was deeply rooted in Egyptian religion and cosmology, which depicted gods engaging in similar unions. For example, the god Osiris married his sister Isis, setting a divine precedent. Concentrating power within the family was also a political strategy. It minimized external threats and internal disputes over succession by ensuring family control over the throne. Royal incestuous marriages peaked during the Ptolemaic period, reflecting a blend of Egyptian and Hellenistic traditions. Divine kingship justified royal incest in ancient Egypt. The pharaoh, as the intermediary between gods and people, required a pure bloodline. The belief in bloodline purity was thought to secure the kingdom's prosperity and stability, as the pharaoh's divine favor extended to the land and people. Rituals and religious ceremonies reinforced this ideology, portraying the pharaoh and his consorts in divine roles, legitimizing their unions. This integration of religious beliefs with state governance created a robust framework supporting royal incest. Historical records of royal incest in ancient Egypt feature figures like Akhenaten and Nefertiti. Akhenaten, ruling during the 18th dynasty, is noted for his religious reforms and marrying his daughter to preserve the royal bloodline. His son, Tutankhamun, married his half-sister Ankhesenamun. Such practices continued into the Ptolemaic dynasty, where rulers adopted Egyptian customs to legitimize their reign, including family intermarriage. Cleopatra VII, the last active Ptolemaic ruler, married her younger brother Ptolemy XIII. These unions were crucial for maintaining the perception of divine right and political stability. Incestuous relationships in ancient Egypt are often linked to the royal family's desire to preserve the divine bloodline. However, incest among commoners also existed, driven by social and economic factors. High mortality rates and economic uncertainty motivated families to form strong internal alliances. Ancient Egyptian laws allowed marriages between close kin, though brothers and sisters were exceptions outside the royal circle. Economic necessity, social customs, and religious traditions converged, leading to the acceptance and practice of incestuous relationships among common Egyptians. Archaeological findings illuminate ancient Egyptian life. Burial sites with inscriptions and grave goods hint at familial relationships. Skeletal remains analysis reveals close-kin marriages among commoners. DNA studies from mummies indicate high inbreeding levels, aligning with historical records. This biological data matches cultural and legal frameworks allowing such unions. Artifacts, including household items, offer insights into domestic lives. Personal letters and legal documents describe marriages and family arrangements supporting endogamy. The emphasis on family continuity and economic stability was evident even at basic societal levels. The practice was more common in rural areas than urban centers, likely due to different social and economic pressures. Archaeological evidence and textual records provide a comprehensive picture of why and how incestuous relationships were integrated into daily life for many common Egyptians, sustained by legal acceptance, social necessity, and economic benefit. Next on our incest list is ancient Rome, where incestuous relationships, especially among the elite, were driven by political, social, and economic motivations, and not at all because their sisters were hot Roman blondes. Yeah, right. The Julio-Claudian dynasty exemplifies the incest theory, with emperors Claudius and Nero notorious for their incestuous unions. Claudius married his niece Agrippina the Younger to secure his rule and intertwine the family's dominance. Roman laws and moral perceptions of incest differed significantly from modern standards. As the Roman Empire grew, stricter laws to regulate incest emerged, yet loopholes and exemptions persisted for political reasons. Another case was Emperor Caligula's marriage to his sister Drusilla, seen as both scandalous and a power move. Under Emperor Augustus, the Julian laws aimed to restore moral standards and family values by penalizing adultery and incest. Despite these efforts, incestuous practices persisted in certain circles for strategic benefits. Incest in ancient Greece, however, though taboo today, was a complex practice rooted in various traditions and beliefs. City-states like Sparta and Thessaly practiced endogamy, marrying within a particular group. This custom extended beyond royals to citizens, strengthening community bonds. The family unit was central to Greek society, and incestuous marriages aimed to preserve property and power within the family. Greek mythology contains numerous examples of gods and heroes engaging in incestuous relationships. The story of Oedipus, who unwittingly wed his mother, Jocasta, highlights the tragic consequences of such unions. Zeus, king of the gods, married his sister Hera, showing divine endorsement of these practices. These tales mirrored societal norms and validated human behavior by attributing it to the gods. Philosopher Plato discussed incest in his works. In Plato's The Republic, he examines incest within his ideal state, suggesting selective breeding among the ruling class for superior offspring. While he doesn't directly endorse brother-sister marriage, he implies relaxing marriage restrictions to strengthen the state, indicating cautious consideration of incest's potential benefits by intellectuals of the time. Historical records and archaeological findings confirm incestuous practices. Certain burial sites reveal closely related individuals buried together, hinting at maintained familial bonds through marriage. Ancient Greek legal texts offer additional insight, detailing rules and exceptions for familial marriage. The primary aim was often to safeguard property and ensure suitable heirs, but incest also had socio-political implications. Intermarriage between powerful families could solidify alliances, consolidating power and influence within society's upper echelons. These practices were controversial, sparking moral debates even then. Mythological narratives integrating incestuous relationships mirrored human realities and societal norms. Gods and heroes engaged in these relationships, providing celestial validation. The Greeks reconciled their moral reservations with mythological stories. Tragic consequences, such as those in the tales of Electra, cautioned against the dangers and taboos of incest. Legal frameworks evolved to address the complexities of incest. By the classical period, incest was increasingly stigmatized, and more laws prohibited close-kin marriages. This shift highlights a move towards a more rigid societal structure, reflecting changing attitudes and an understanding of the repercussions associated with incest. Next up, Japan's vivid history includes unique cultural practices, such as incest within royal and noble families, as well as some really weird traditions going along with it. Keep your hats on, it might get windy in here. Incest tradition dates back to ancient times and was prominent during the Heian period, spanning from 794 to 1185 AD. Marrying siblings or close relatives helped prevent wealth and power from being diluted by external influences. Historical records show numerous instances of emperors and empresses marrying their siblings or close relatives to ensure power remained concentrated. Many noble families adopted this practice to safeguard their estates and political leverage. In Shinto, Japan's indigenous spirituality, purity was paramount, and incestuous unions were seen as a way to maintain it. A notable example is the myth of Izanagi and Izanami, divine siblings who created the Japanese islands. This myth provided divine justification for incestuous relationships among the ruling class, suggesting such unions were divinely sanctioned. Additionally, these practices were practical. In an era where political alliances and stability were crucial, marrying a close relative ensured loyalty and unity within noble families. It minimized the risk of betrayal and internal conflict, creating a more stable power structure. During the Heian period, the Fujiwara clan emerged as a dominant aristocratic family, controlling the imperial court. They used marriages strategically, marrying daughters to emperors and placing male relatives in key government positions. This approach solidified their influence across generations. By marrying within the family, they kept power and resources concentrated, avoiding dilution through external alliances. The Fujiwara clan dominated Japanese politics for centuries, intertwining politics, marriage, and family lineage to maintain elite power. Incestuous marriages extended beyond the Heian period, influencing other dynasties and noble families in Japan's history. The Tokugawa shogunate, from 1603 to 1868 AD, also witnessed incestuous relationships within the shogun's family. The Tokugawa family arranged marriages between close relatives to maintain power. They believed such unions would produce stable and controllable heirs. These strategic marriages helped sustain a concentrated power structure, minimizing the risk of outsiders disrupting the order. Incestuous practices were deeply embedded in cultural attitudes toward marriage and family relations. Japanese literature and historical texts from the Heian and subsequent periods often romanticize these relationships, portraying them as noble and pure. Works such as The Tale of Genji, written by Murasaki Shikibu in the early 11th century, depict complex family relationships that sometimes include forbidden love. These stories reflected and reinforced societal attitudes, making incestuous relationships more acceptable among the elite. The romanticism surrounding these relationships helped normalize them, ensuring they persisted across generations. The closed nature of Japan's high society meant fewer opportunities for external influences, allowing these practices to remain relatively unchallenged. The intertwining of cultural ideals with strategic necessities demonstrated how deeply ingrained these practices were in maintaining social order and power dynamics. Buddhism, arriving in Japan in the 6th century, introduced new perspectives on incest, generally discouraging it to promote moral conduct and familial harmony. However, aristocratic traditions limited the impact of Buddhist resistance among the elite. Over time, Japanese society synthesized Buddhist principles with existing cultural practices, leading to a nuanced, increasingly negative view of incest. By the Edo period, spanning 1603–1868, the combined influences of Buddhism, Confucianism, and growing foreign contact began reshaping Japanese attitudes toward incest. This era saw a gradual decline in the acceptability of incestuous marriages among the elite, reflecting broader changes in societal norms and moral values. During the Edo period, incestuous practices among the elite declined, but remnants persisted in rural and isolated communities. Local customs and the desire to preserve family wealth occasionally led to incestuous marriages on a smaller scale. As Japan modernized in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, such practices became rare and socially unacceptable. Legal reforms and Western influence during the Meiji Restoration from 1868 to 1912 played a significant role in this shift. New legal codes explicitly prohibited incestuous marriages, marking the end of the practice in Japanese society. Cultural transformation, legal changes, and global integration shifted societal norms towards rejecting incest. In contemporary Japan, the historical practice of incestuous marriages is largely forgotten or viewed through a historical lens. Modern legal and social frameworks strictly prohibit incest, and such relationships are widely condemned. These remnants offer a fascinating glimpse into past societal norms and power structures. The strategic, religious, and social factors that once justified these practices highlight Japan's dynamic historical development. Today, Japan's strict laws and social mores reflect a complete departure from this element of its past. But incest, a taboo in many cultures, has a complex history in India as well. Ancient Hindu texts, like the Rig Veda, reference incestuous relationships among deities. For example, the goddess Usha and her brother Ushas had a union described in these texts. Early Vedic society, spanning from 1500 BC to 500 BC, viewed incest through a spiritual lens, linking it to divine creation and cosmic order. Royal families, especially during the Gupta Empire from 320 to 550 AD, practiced incestuous marriages to preserve bloodline purity. In South India, Dravidian culture often allowed and encouraged cousin marriages. In ancient India, the concept of incest was intertwined with cosmology and metaphysics, especially in the Vedas and Upanishads. The Rig Veda's Purusha principle describes a cosmic being whose self-sacrifice created the universe, sometimes involving elements perceived as incestuous. The Mahabharata tells the story of Arjuna and Subhadra, cousins who married, illustrating how cultural context once accepted such practices. Over time, societal norms evolved, and these customs faced resistance. The Manusmriti, an ancient legal text, detailed laws against close kinship marriages, marking a shift from early acceptance to the gradual prohibition of incestuous relationships. The shift from acceptance to prohibition of incest in India is evident in various dharmashastras, such as the Gautama Dharma Sutra and the Yajnavalkya Smriti. These texts labeled incestuous relationships as a patya dosha, a grave social and moral fault. In medieval India, enforcement of these laws intensified, aligning with a heightened focus on the caste system and purity of lineage. Texts like the Mitakshara and the Dayabhaga explicitly forbade incestuous liaisons. The Bhakti movement, emerging around the 7th century, emphasized personal devotion over rituals, indirectly discouraging permissive views on incest. As regional kingdoms evolved, local customs were codified, and views on incest gradually converged toward uniform disapproval. These developments highlight the dynamic nature of social values in response to religious, legal, and cultural changes. In modern India, the legal stance explicitly condemns incest, aligning with global norms. The Indian Penal Code categorizes incest under sexual offenses. Despite legal prohibitions, incest occasionally surfaces, indicating underlying socioeconomic complexities. Genetic science has clarified the biological risks of incestuous unions, reinforcing societal prohibitions. India's sociocultural evolution shows a definitive move towards disapproving incest, driven by legal changes, religious reforms, and scientific advancements. Contemporary India largely condemns incest, reflecting alignment with national laws and international social mores. It wouldn't probably surprise you if I said that the entire Asia has a rich history of incest. Not just India. They're wacky there, but who isn't, right? In ancient Persia, the Zoroastrian religion, originating around 600 BC, viewed certain forms of incest, particularly close-kin marriages, uniquely. The practice known as wedada allowed unions between siblings or other close relatives, seen as purifying and reinforcing familial bonds, integral to Zoroastrian eschatological beliefs. These marriages were believed to create a sacred bond, contributing to the community's spiritual and social harmony. In Mongolia, the Mongol Empire under Genghis Khan exhibited another aspect of incestuous relationships. Although not as institutionalized, alliances through marriages among close kin were practical for political consolidation and maintaining tribal cohesion. These unions helped establish loyalties and strengthen bonds within the ruling elite, ensuring the stability of the empire's extensive territories. In ancient Tibet, royal incestuous relationships were practiced to solidify political alliances and preserve the purity of the royal bloodline. Historical records, such as King Songtsen Gampo's lineage in the 7th century, indicate that siblings and close relatives often married to strengthen dynastic claims. These practices were influenced by the region's blend of indigenous beliefs and later Buddhist customs. In ancient Southeast Asia, societies like Thailand and Vietnam saw incestuous marriages among the elite as strategies to consolidate wealth, power, and social status. In Southeast Asia, the Angkor Empire in Cambodia intertwined royal incest with dynastic politics. Temple inscriptions from the 10th to 13th centuries describe sibling marriages within the ruling class. Kings married their sisters to reaffirm their divine right to rule and maintain royal blood purity. This practice highlighted the interconnectedness of religion and royalty, where rulers were seen as divine beings. In the 19th and 20th centuries, attitudes towards incest shifted across Asia. Western colonial influences, legal reforms, and modern educational systems contributed to the decline of royally sanctioned incestuous marriages. These changes reflected broader social transformations, as countries in Asia adopted more westernized legal frameworks and societal norms. In ancient Korean history, on the other hand, familial relationships were governed by Confucian principles shaping marriage and family structures. Incestuous relationships were forbidden to uphold moral integrity and social harmony. Marriages were arranged within social classes but outside immediate families to preserve lineage and societal order. Records from the early Three Kingdoms period, from 57 BC to 668 AD, indicate severe penalties, including death, for violating these norms. During the Joseon dynasty, spanning 1392 to 1897, the Gyeongguk Daejeon legal code explicitly outlawed incestuous unions, with punishments like banishment or execution. Historical archives document numerous cases where individuals faced harsh consequences for inappropriate relationships. These boundaries significantly influence societal norms regarding family and marriage in Korean history. In Korean mythology, the tale of Dangun, the legendary founder of Gojoseon in 2333 BC, offers a unique perspective on incest. According to legend, Dangun's mother, Ongnyeol, was a bear transformed into a woman by the deity Hwanung. She later married Hwanung, highlighting a mythological instance of divine intervention enabling unconventional unions. However, such myths were exceptions and not reflective of societal norms. During the Goryeo dynasty, from 980 to 1392, strict regulations against incest persisted, influenced by Confucian and Buddhist teachings. Monogamous marriage and strict exogamy were emphasized, promoting social stability and moral behavior. Royal families and the aristocracy were under intense scrutiny to adhere to these principles, with genealogical records meticulously maintained to prevent breaches. Violations could lead to severe penalties, including demotion or ostracism. These practices underscored the importance of family purity and moral conduct, laying a foundation for maintaining social order and ethical behavior across generations in Korean history. Legal and societal restrictions on incest in Korean history were mirrored in customary laws and cultural taboos. Villages and clans adhered to informal rules that augmented official regulations, ensuring that marriages within the same clan were avoided. Detailed family registries called jokbo played a crucial role in tracking familial lines and preventing incestuous relationships. Jokbo provided comprehensive records of ancestors and descendants, essential for verifying potential marriage partners' family backgrounds. This societal emphasis on purity and moral integrity was reinforced by religious practices and communal activities, creating an environment where the concept of incest was universally condemned. Modern Korea continues to adhere to these historical principles through contemporary legal frameworks. The prohibition against incest remains enshrined in South Korean law, and cultural sentiment strongly rejects such relationships. The historical evolution of these norms highlights a continuous and deliberate effort to preserve social harmony and moral conduct throughout Korean history. In ancient Africa, incest played distinct roles in various societies. Among the ruling classes of the Kingdom of Kush, which thrived from around 1070 BC to 350 AD, incest was practiced in royal families. Historical sources suggest this reinforced the connection between the ruling family and the divine, as gods were believed to have ordained these lineages. This practice strengthened the hierarchical structure, consolidating sacred and political power within a small, closely knit royal family, ensuring greater control over succession and governance continuity. The ancient Ethiopian civilization, centered around the kingdom of Aksum, exhibited similar practices. Reigning from approximately 100 AD to 940 AD, Aksumite rulers often married siblings or close relatives. This intertwining of divine favor with royal legitimacy was central to their belief system. The Aksumites saw these unions as a way to prevent foreign influence and protect their divine heritage. Incest played a crucial role in the social and political fabric of the kingdom. Royal incest in ancient African societies symbolized power, divinity, and lineage. These unions were justified by political and religious beliefs, not viewed through today's moral lens, but as essential for governance and social stability. Each society had unique reasons for practicing incest, mainly focusing on bloodline purity and divine right. From Egypt's pharaohs to the rulers of Kush, Aksum, Numidia, Ashanti, and Congo, royal incest highlighted the interplay between spirituality and politics, ensuring dynastic continuity and stability through controlled familial alliances. The incest taboo is a globally acknowledged social norm, but its origins and implementations vary. In pre-colonial Americas, indigenous tribes had diverse practices, from strict prohibitions to lenient attitudes. Polynesian aristocracy permitted sibling marriage to preserve pure bloodlines, while Inca rulers saw royal incest as a means to maintain dynastic purity. Incest rules were shaped by specific cultural, social, and political needs. Anthropologists note that relatives sometimes married there to secure strategic power alliances. The Aztecs practiced polygamy, including unions now considered incestuous, to expand their influence. Understanding these practices in historical context is crucial rather than through a modern lens. Cultural norms around incest were more about societal structure and control than the act itself. In many indigenous cultures, the family was a fundamental organizing unit, reflecting broader social hierarchies and power dynamics. Among the indigenous tribes of the Americas, incest customs varied. In the Andean region, the Incas practiced royal incest, with rulers marrying their sisters to maintain political stability and consolidate power within the elite. Other Andean tribes had strict rules against incest, with severe penalties. The Maya civilization had a complex approach. Commoners faced strict prohibitions, while the ruling class permitted marriages between close relatives to secure political alliances. The Aztecs had unique customs. Incestuous marriages strengthened the state's control over territories. Exploring incest practices in pre-colonial Americas, we find the Natchez people of the lower Mississippi Valley. The Great Sun, their paramount chief, married his sister to maintain sacred lineage and political stability. The Natchez believed their royal family descended from divine beings, and sibling marriages reinforced this divine status. In contrast, tribes like the Lakota and Cheyenne adhered to strict anti-incest rules, broadly defining incestuous relationships to include many clan members. These prohibitions were tied to their clan structures, organizing social roles and responsibilities. In the Pacific Northwest, tribes like the Kwakwaka'wakw practiced ceremonies where privileges, including marriage rights within certain kin groups, were passed down. In the southeastern region, the Cherokee had matrilineal clans with strict incest taboos, forbidding marriage within the same clan. These taboos extended to various relatives, ensuring clear marriage boundaries. Similarly, the Hopi of the southwestern United States, a matrilineal society, maintained strict incest prohibitions. Hopi clans were integral to their social, religious, and political life, with marriages arranged to avoid incest and strengthen interclan alliances. In the Caribbean, the Taino people permitted sibling marriage among the nobility, akin to Incan practices. Taino chiefs, or caciques, married close relatives to solidify their rule and stabilize leadership, symbolizing their divine authority. Incest regulations were culturally rooted, maintaining social and political order. The Iroquois Confederacy, spanning the northeastern United States and Canada, had complex kinship systems. They followed matrilineal descent, tracing lineage through the mother, and clans were matrilineal. Incest prohibitions were strictly enforced, banning marriage within one's clan. This clan exogamy reinforced bonds between different clans and ensured genetic diversity. The Great Law of Peace stressed the importance of these marital rules to maintain societal harmony. The Puebloan peoples of the southwestern United States, including the Zuni and Caris, also had structured incest taboos. Their societies were organized into clans that governed social, religious, and political life. Marriages were arranged to avoid intra-clan unions, creating alliances beyond individual clans and fostering community interconnectedness. The intricate nature of these incest taboos highlights how pre-colonial tribes systematically organized their societies to reflect and reinforce their cultural, social, and political values, ensuring stability and cohesion within their communities. In the Arctic, the Inuit people had distinct practices regarding incest. Their nomadic society, organized into small, family-based groups, strictly prohibited incestuous relationships to ensure genetic diversity and community health. These alliances not only avoided incest but also served as diplomatic tools to prevent conflicts and secure peaceful relations. In pre-colonial Americas, intricate incest taboos were intertwined with religious beliefs. The Moche civilization of coastal Peru conducted elaborate ceremonies where the elite practiced ceremonial incest to invoke divine favor. The Toltec civilization in central Mexico had incest practices among the priestly caste to preserve religious sanctity and continuity. The Guarani people of South America enforced strict incest taboos but allowed cousin marriages to strengthen familial ties and unify kinship networks. These practices show that incest regulations were deeply linked with the spiritual and ritualistic worldviews of these societies, aligning familial relationships with their cosmological beliefs and societal needs. The ruling elites of the Chimu civilization in northern Peru practiced incestuous marriages to merge divine and royal authority, solidifying control over spiritual and temporal realms. Similarly, the Mixtec nobility of Oaxaca, Mexico engaged in incestuous unions to preserve royal lineage sanctity. In contrast, the Arikara tribes of the Great Plains in North America strictly prohibited incest to maintain social cohesion and communal integrity. The Tairona civilization of northern Colombia followed a matrilineal system, forming intricate marriage alliances to strengthen political and economic ties among clans. Incest taboos and practices adapted to each culture's specific needs and beliefs, ensuring social order and continuity. The Tlingit people of the Pacific Northwest had a different approach. Tlingit society was divided into two moieties, or social groups, and marriage within the same moiety was strictly forbidden. These moieties were further divided into clans, with marriage rules reinforcing social cohesion and kinship ties. Incest rules were strategic tools to navigate the socio-political and economic landscapes of their time. The Carib people of the Caribbean prohibited close-kin incest, but encouraged marriages between distant relatives to strengthen alliances and ensure group survival. The Kayapo people of the Amazon practiced regulated exogamy, allowing certain cousin marriages to balance familial cohesion with genetic diversity. These incest regulations maintained social order, political alliances, and community resilience. The Tolowa of present-day California and Oregon enforced strict incest taboos to maintain social fabric and ensure healthy offspring. Among the Mapuche of southern Chile and Argentina, clans determined marriage eligibility, enforcing exogamy to ensure social harmony and expand support networks. The Calusa, an indigenous tribe of Florida, exemplified distinctive incest practices. They maintained a hierarchical society where incestuous marriages among the nobility concentrated power and preserved the divine status of the ruling class. Believing their leaders descended from the gods, these marriages sustained divine lineage. Similarly, the Kogi of Colombia's Sierra Nevada de Santa Marta practiced sibling marriages among their religious leaders, or mamos, to perpetuate spiritual authority and continuity. The Chickasaw in the southeastern United States enforced incest prohibitions through their matrilineal clan system, maintaining social order and forming alliances with other tribes. These diverse incest customs in pre-colonial Americas reveal multifaceted societal approaches. Such practices were intricately linked to social, political, and religious structures, ensuring community needs were met while maintaining cohesion and resilience. But now that we've discussed almost each and every pre-colonial American tribe's incest history, let's look at how the colonists affected the continent. The early colonial period in the Americas exhibited social norms vastly different from today's. In these close-knit communities, incest was sometimes tolerated due to isolation, lack of marriage partners, and the need for population growth. By the mid-1600s, recorded instances of familial relationships now deemed incestuous existed. These unions often arose from necessity or social isolation, as small settlements far from larger towns faced significant demographic pressures. In early American colonies, regulations on incest were either absent or lenient. Authorities prioritized survival and community stability over strict moral codes. In some regions, particularly the Chesapeake Bay area, marriages between relatives, such as first cousins, were common. These unions were seen pragmatically, considering the limited pool of potential spouses and the need to sustain population levels. Nonetheless, moralists and clergymen voiced disapproval, though their influence was limited. By the late 1600s and early 1700s, the legal framework regarding incestuous relationships began evolving. Colonial charters and laws, influenced by English common law and biblical injunctions, started addressing these unions explicitly. In 1705, the Virginia colony prohibited marriages between close kin. Despite this, enforcement was inconsistent, and familial ties remained influential in small, rural communities. The focus was often on maintaining social order rather than punishing private behavior, leading to sporadic implementation of these laws. Incest cases brought before local courts were typically resolved with leniency or admonishment rather than severe punishment. Perceptions and handling of incestuous relationships varied across colonies. In Puritan New England, regulations were stringent, with consistent enforcement against incest. The New Haven colony's legal code explicitly condemned incest, prescribing severe punishments like public shaming and corporal punishment. Conversely, Southern colonies exhibited greater tolerance due to limited populations and labor needs. Local sentiments and economic necessities often overrode formal legal dictates, allowing incestuous relationships to persist despite prohibitions. This regional variability reflects the complex interplay between law, morality, and practical survival in colonial America. Family dynamics in colonial America influenced incestuous relationships. Family units were vital for survival, economic stability, and social structure. Religious and cultural beliefs about family purity and bloodline integrity sometimes led to the acceptance of these relationships. Religious leaders and moralists frequently warned against the physical and moral dangers of incest, although their warnings were not always heeded. Incestuous relationships in colonial America were documented in diaries, letters, and court records, offering insights into these secretive practices. Massachusetts court records from the 17th century reveal prosecutions for incest, underscoring the legal repercussions and social stigma. Personal accounts in diaries and letters show the complexities and moral ambiguities of these relationships. These documents reveal how individuals and families balanced familial obligations with societal norms. Incestuous relationships in colonial America left a lasting impact on future generations. Although modern standards condemn these practices, they were part of the survival and social structure in early colonies. Gradually, stricter laws and increased social oversight reflected changing attitudes towards family and morality. By the 18th century, as colonies stabilized, the necessity for such unions decreased, leading to stricter enforcement against incest. But now, the good old church-ruled medieval Europe, where things are usually quite strict. Let's look at how they viewed incest, but I'm not guessing there's anything sweet coming up, like a fun night with your second cousin. Incestuous relationships in medieval Europe often involved royal and noble families consolidating power, wealth, and land through strategic marriages. Well, who would have guessed, right? The Catholic Church initially had strict laws against consanguinity, prohibiting marriages up to the 7th degree of separation, but these rules were frequently bent or disregarded by the elite. The papacy granted dispensations, allowing nobles to marry close relatives to preserve stability and alliances. These marriages united vast estates and kingdoms across Europe. In England, the Plantagenets frequently intermarried, and similar practices were seen in France with the Capetians and in Spain with the Castilian royal line. A notable instance was the marriage of Eleanor of Aquitaine to King Henry II, both descendants of Charlemagne. While primarily strategic, these unions later caused genetic issues, a consequence little understood at the time. Medieval consanguinity laws were often manipulated by bishops and local clergy, usually from noble families, to benefit their kin. Incestuous marriages held significant political importance. The Habsburgs, for instance, used such unions to consolidate control over European territories, encapsulated by their motto, Bella Gerantali, tu felix Austria nube, or let others wage war, thou happy Austria marry. The Church's inconsistent enforcement of prohibitions led to legal and societal variances. Royal genealogies reveal patterns of close kin marriages, reinforcing alliances and claims to thrones. The insular nature of medieval aristocracy made incest a prevalent yet complex practice. One notable case of incestuous marriage in medieval Europe was Philip II of Spain and his niece Anna of Austria in 1570. This union highlights how European nobility prioritized political gain over biological concerns. The genetic consequences of intermarrying within the family became significant over generations. The infamous Habsburg jaw, or mandibular prognathism, is often cited as a direct result of prolonged interbreeding among the Habsburgs. These genetic deformities underscored the risks of consanguineous marriages, yet the practice persisted due to its immediate political benefits. Another example is the marriage between John of Gaunt and his niece, Constance of Castile. Such unions were about land, power, and maintaining pure bloodlines, deemed essential for preserving royal lines. Churches played a dual role by both opposing and facilitating these marriages, depending on the political climate. Over time, the cumulative genetic issues prompted a gradual societal shift away from such practices. The Church's role in medieval incestuous marriages is particularly notable during the Avignon papacy, spanning from 1309 to 1377, influenced by French monarchs. This period saw numerous dispensations for royal and noble marriages within close kin. For example, Philip V of France married his first cousin, Joan II of Burgundy, in 1307. Despite the Church's official stance against consanguinity, its need to maintain influence over powerful dynasties led to leniency. The tug-of-war between ecclesiastical rules and royal prerogatives created a complex societal landscape. Records indicate a high awareness of the potential political upheavals caused by dissolving such unions, sometimes resulting in wars or significant diplomatic conflicts. For instance, the conflict between the papacy and the French crown over King Philip IV's desire to annul his marriage to Joan I of Navarre in 1284 demonstrates the delicate balance of power and personal relationships. Medieval literature and chronicles often reflect societal attitudes towards incestuous relationships. Chroniclers like Geoffrey of Monmouth and Jean Froissart recorded numerous instances of noble intermarriage with a tone of pragmatism rather than condemnation. The legendary stories of figures such as King Arthur and his half-sister Morgause, later depicted by writers like Thomas Malory, reflect the era's complex views on lineage and legitimacy. These narratives illustrate the intertwining of myth and reality, where incestuous relationships could symbolize both a threat to social order and a means of preserving royal bloodlines. Legal records from the period reveal the severe consequences for non-royal incestuous unions. However, the elite's immunity from these penalties underscored the double standards within medieval society. The protection of dynastic integrity often trumped moral and religious prohibitions, highlighting the divergence between societal norms and the actions of the ruling class. Events like the Borgia family's alleged incestuous affairs in the late Middle Ages and Renaissance exemplify this complex legacy, blending historical fact with scandalous rumor and myth. Europe's ruling families often pursued close-kin marriages to consolidate power within a limited pool of elite heirs. England's royal family faced challenges. The Wars of the Roses, from 1455 to 1487, a series of dynastic conflicts, highlighted the role of incestuous alliances in both conflict and resolution. Henry VII's marriage to Elizabeth of York, his relative, aimed to end the war by uniting warring factions and stabilizing the monarchy. Additionally, medieval pseudo-scientific beliefs about heredity influenced these practices, as maintaining pure blood was erroneously thought to ensure superior traits, despite evidence of the health risks associated with consanguinity. Medieval pseudoscience influenced incestuous practices beyond heredity. Alchemical beliefs suggested blood purity could enhance longevity, appealing to the aristocracy's desire for power and stability. Alchemists swayed court decisions, while medieval warfare and disease pressured noble families to secure heirs through close familial bonds. The Black Death, spanning from 1347 to 1351, increased the need for strategic alliances to maintain dynastic continuity. Women played pivotal roles in these alliances, often married to close relatives to cement political ties. Isabella of Castile's marriage to Ferdinand II, her second cousin, united Castile and Aragon, exemplifying the intersection of politics, pseudoscience, and social survival strategies in medieval aristocracy. Throughout the medieval period, the Church's role in regulating and sometimes endorsing incestuous marriages evolved. The Fourth Lateran Council in 1215 sought to curb the practice by recognizing only up to the fourth degree of consanguinity. Despite this, powerful families often secured exceptions. Papal dispensations became negotiation tools, exemplified by the marriage of Edward III of England and Philippa of Hainault, his second cousin. The Church's ambivalence mirrored a broader societal struggle between moral norms and political pragmatism. The Byzantine Empire exhibited similar dynamics, with close kin unions among ruling families, highlighting the practice's universality across Christendom. Legal frameworks varied, with some regions enforcing harsher penalties. Over time, canon law became more stringent. Growing awareness of genetic issues gradually led to a decline in such marriages among European nobility. The effect of marital alliances on European geopolitics underscores the strategic importance of incestuous unions in medieval Europe. In the Holy Roman Empire, marriage diplomacy was pivotal. Frederick Barbarossa's marriage to Beatrice of Burgundy, his second cousin once removed, exemplified using consanguineous marriages to cement political alliances. These unions ensured loyalty among vassals and bound noble families to the imperial crown. Similarly, in France, the Capetian dynasty frequently engaged in consanguineous marriages to consolidate power. Chapter houses and monasteries also played roles, acting as sanctuaries for political maneuvering through marital contracts. International alliances often relied on close kinship. The union between Margaret of Austria and her nephew, Charles V, Holy Roman Emperor, showcases the lengths to which dynasties would go to secure alliances. This marriage served to unite the Habsburg Empire's sprawling territories. The legacy of these unions is evident in the genetic lineage of current European royalty. The evolving views on incestuous marriages in late medieval Europe marked a significant shift. By the 15th and 16th centuries, Renaissance humanism began challenging traditional notions. Scholars like Erasmus of Rotterdam criticized close kin marriages for their ethical and health implications. The rise of Protestantism further disrupted the practice, with reformers like Martin Luther advocating stricter adherence to biblical prohibitions against incest. In England, the Reformation, initiated by Henry VIII's break with the Catholic Church, led to new marriage laws. These changes reflected broader societal shifts towards individualism and scientific inquiry. Meanwhile, royal families navigated the balance between political necessity and emerging ethical considerations. By the end of the medieval period, increased awareness of genetic issues influenced royal marriage strategies. The legacy of medieval incestuous unions persisted in genetic health problems among European nobility, prompting a gradual shift towards diversifying genetic pools. This period underscores a complex interplay of politics, religion, and emerging science in shaping the evolution of marital practices. And now, because why not, a small Baltic country with a rich history, Estonia. Estonia, on the Baltic Sea's eastern coast, has a history shaped by foreign rule, Christianization, and the interplay of rural and town life. Church court records reveal instances of incest, highlighting the tension between customary practices and imposed legal frameworks. In the 13th century, the Teutonic Order's Christianization of Estonia enforced canonical law, strictly forbidding incestuous unions and aligning Estonia with broader European norms. Pre-Christian customs were more flexible, with incestuous relationships largely dependent on local traditions and communal acceptance. In pre-Christian Estonia, family relationships centered on survival and social harmony. Extended families lived together, forming close-knit communities where intra-family marriages helped consolidate property and resources. Christianity's arrival disrupted these practices, imposing new moral and legal standards. Church authorities rigorously documented incestuous relationships, not just for moral reasons, but to exert control over the populace. These records often merged with local folklore, blurring the lines between myth and legal precedent. A notable 17th century case involves an Estonian peasant family. Church records describe siblings accused of incest after villagers reported their close relationship. The case attracted significant attention from church and secular courts. Punishments for incest ranged from public penance to severe penalties like exile or death, reflecting the offense's gravity within the Christian moral framework. Documenting such cases by church authorities served a legal function and reinforced Christian doctrines among the local population, aiming to reshape Estonian social norms. By the 19th century, Estonia experienced significant social and cultural changes under Russian and German rule. Despite the formal Christian moral framework, rural areas retained many traditional practices, including incest, especially in isolated communities. However, Estonian society had become more aligned with broader European norms due to greater integration with neighboring regions. Documentation from this period shows a decline in incest cases, partially due to changing societal values and the influence of the Enlightenment, which emphasized individual rights and rationality. The combined legacy of traditional practices and imposed legal frameworks created a complex tapestry of societal norms regarding incest. But now, moving back to Europe in Renaissance period. The topic of incest during the Renaissance is complex, rooted in socio-political dynamics. Incestuous marriages were common in royal families, driven by the desire to consolidate power and secure alliances. Marrying within the family kept wealth, titles, and influence concentrated, preventing rivals from gaining power. This practice had significant genetic consequences, leading to inherited disorders among European nobility. Politically, incestuous unions deterred external rivals, making them strategic maneuvers as well as familial practices. Renaissance humanists revered the art, literature, and customs of ancient Greece and Rome, which often included depictions of incestuous relationships among gods and rulers. These tales sometimes justified similar practices in contemporary society. The hierarchical Renaissance society emphasized preserving noble bloodlines, leading to marriages between close relatives to maintain family lineage. The Catholic Church, while officially condemning incest, frequently granted dispensations for consanguineous marriages among the nobility to ensure political stability and alliances. These dispensations reveal a pragmatic approach to religious doctrine, accommodating the political realities of the Renaissance. The fall of Constantinople in 1453 drove many noble families to seek refuge in Western Europe. These displaced nobles often married within their ranks to preserve their heritage and influence. The rise of powerful Italian city-states like Florence and Venice fostered a competitive environment where families aimed to maintain dominance. Such unions also legitimized claims to thrones, evident in the intricate connections of the Medici and Borgia families. This complex web of familial relations ensured power and wealth remained among a select few, reinforcing the trend of incestuous marriages. During the Renaissance, the understanding of genetics was rudimentary. Although the effects of inbreeding, such as inherited disorders, were somewhat recognized, they were not well understood. This lack of genetic knowledge did not deter royal families from incestuous marriages. Noble families often attributed health issues to divine will or saw them as minor trade-offs to retain political power. Charles II of Spain, deeply affected by inbreeding, exemplifies the severe consequences of these practices. Born into the Habsburg dynasty, Charles II suffered numerous health and developmental problems due to his parents' close familial ties. Despite these known risks, political stability and family loyalty often outweighed concerns about genetic health. This reflects the broader Renaissance mindset, which prioritized immediate political and social gains over long-term implications. Understanding incestuous practices in the Renaissance requires examining women's roles. Noble women were often pawns in dynastic strategies, forced into marriages with close relatives to preserve political alliances and family power. Their autonomy was sacrificed for the family's greater good. However, some women wielded considerable influence, navigating family dynamics to further their political agendas. Caterina Sforza, a notable Italian noblewoman, exemplifies how women maneuvered within these constraints to achieve personal and political goals. Despite a system promoting consanguineous unions, she exercised significant power. The Enlightenment era, spanning the late 17th to early 19th centuries, was marked by intellectual and philosophical advancements. Yet, a curious and taboo subject persisted: incest. Incestuous relationships during this period can be traced to societal structures and scientific inquiries. This practice was not just accepted, it was often encouraged. Monarchies and noble families exemplified incestuous relationships to consolidate power. Enlightenment thinkers, who promoted rationality and progress, faced conflicting beliefs about incest. Philosophers like Voltaire criticized the practice, while others were ambivalent or silently accepting. These complex views highlight the tension between emerging modern values and traditional practices. Natural science professors also explored the genetic and biological impacts of incest, laying early groundwork for genetics. During the Enlightenment, aristocratic incest was linked to preserving noble bloodlines. As science progressed, figures like Carl Linnaeus studied human heredity, subtly criticizing incest by linking genetic defects to consanguineous unions. The Enlightenment's pursuit of knowledge coexisted with old-world practices, underscoring the era's complexities. Discussions on incest addressed morality, power, and control within the upper classes. Incest found justifications beyond noble families in the broader Enlightenment scientific community. The era saw a rise in anatomical studies and burgeoning fields like embryology and heredity. Scientists and philosophers grappled with human reproduction questions, often using incestuous relationships as case studies. Jean-Jacques Rousseau mentioned incest in his writings, reflecting on its societal implications. Carl Linnaeus, leading the emerging field of botany, used plant breeding experiments to draw parallels with human heredity. This period marked the beginning of systematic inquiries into genetics, though the understanding was rudimentary. These scientific explorations highlighted the dangers and moral quandaries of incest, gradually influencing public opinion. The intricate web of Enlightenment beliefs, combining scientific curiosity with traditional practices, mirrored the era's broader conflicts and progress. Incest during the Enlightenment actively engaged contemporary thinkers and scientists. Incest in the Enlightenment era became a focal point of legal and religious discussions, with legislation varying widely across Europe. In some areas, laws were stringent, mirroring the Church's firm opposition. Canon law, deeply intertwined with societal norms, shaped public opinion on incest. The Catholic Church condemned it as a sin and moral failing, imposing severe penalties. However, enforcement was inconsistent, often swayed by social rank and political power. Some Enlightenment philosophers, like Montesquieu in The Spirit of the Laws, called for a more nuanced understanding, examining how cultural and historical contexts influenced views on incest. He argued against rigid moral judgments. The legacy of incest in the Enlightenment period leaves a controversial and complex historical footprint. Once accepted and even encouraged among aristocrats to preserve wealth and power, the practice gradually became a subject of scientific scrutiny and moral debate. Enlightenment thinkers, grappling with new ideas about rationality, individual rights, and human nature, saw incest as a symbol of broader societal tensions. The era's investigation into human heredity laid the groundwork for modern genetics, despite its rudimentary understanding. Discussions surrounding incest touched on myriad aspects, from power dynamics in noble families to evolving legal and religious norms. By the late 18th and early 19th centuries, growing awareness of genetic defects and a shifting moral landscape began to challenge the acceptance of incestuous relationships. The Victorian era, 1837 to 1901 under Queen Victoria, was marked by strict social codes and moral values. Incest was legally defined as sexual relations between close blood relatives, including siblings, parents, and children. Societal views often extended this taboo to cousins, despite no legal restrictions on cousin marriage. Prominent figures like Charles Darwin, who married his first cousin Emma Wedgwood, exemplified this trend. The intersection of incest and eugenics also emerged during this era. Eugenic theories aimed at improving human genetics coexisted with prevalent cousin marriages among elites. Critics argued such unions risked genetic defects, yet they persisted. The scientific community debated the impact of cousin marriage on heredity, influencing public opinion and legal discourse. Government reports, like the 1865 Report on the State of Lunacy, highlighted concerns over genetic disorders from close kin unions. Victorian-era medical authorities warned against incestuous marriages, citing increased risks of mental and physical disorders. Victorian attitudes towards incest were intertwined with economic and social strategies. The upper classes viewed intra-family marriages as a means to consolidate wealth and retain property and titles within the lineage. This practice drew concern and criticism from various societal sectors. While the middle and lower classes occasionally emulated the upper class, they generally held more conservative views on incest. Fear of genetic repercussions from close kin marriages was fueled by limited understanding of heredity at the time. Victorians relied on anecdotal evidence and early scientific studies to form their opinions on the risks of birth defects and mental illnesses from incestuous relationships. Medical journals frequently published warnings about the dangers of inbreeding and the potential transmission of hereditary diseases. Public discourse mirrored these concerns, with newspapers and pamphlets discussing the negative outcomes observed in offspring from such unions. This period saw rising interest in heredity and genetics research, alongside growing public awareness of these issues. Prominent doctors and scientists, like Sir Arthur Mitchell and Sir George Darwin, explored the consequences of incestuous marriages, contributing to the evolving understanding and stigmatization of the practice. In the Victorian era, the legal perspective on incest was shaped by common and statutory law. Parliament enacted laws to uphold moral standards, notably the Incest Act of 1908, which criminalized such relations. Prior to this act, serious consequences awaited those caught in incestuous liaisons. Courts could annul incestuous marriages, and individuals involved faced social ostracism and legal penalties. The Church of England emphasized moral hazards and divine prohibitions against such unions, with sermons and religious texts warning of spiritual and physical consequences. Newspapers frequently publicized incest cases, contributing to public condemnation. Sensationalist journalism highlighted salacious details to arouse outrage. The combination of legal, religious, and media influences created a complex web of stigma around incest, making it a focal point of Victorian moral discourse. Victorian literature and popular fiction significantly shaped public perceptions of incest. Novels and stories often explored themes of forbidden love and familial relationships, highlighting the consequences of such unions. These narratives reinforced social stigmas and fears, acting as cautionary tales. The era's interest in phrenology and human behavior studies also influenced the discourse. Phrenologists claimed to identify a predisposition towards behaviors like incest based on skull shape and size. This pseudo-scientific approach swayed public opinion on the dangers of incestuous relationships. Education and public health campaigns emerged to inform people about the risks of close-kin marriages. By the late 19th century, the convergence of legal, social, and scientific developments firmly entrenched the taboo against incest in Victorian society. And before we discuss incest in modern times, let's see what the biggest religions on earth have to say about incest. First up, Buddhism. Early Buddhist texts intertwine the origins of incest with mythology and history. One notable example is the story of the Shakya clan, to which the Buddha Siddhartha Gautama belonged. Legend says the Sakya descended from King Okaka of the Ikshvaku dynasty. After King Okaka banished his eldest son, the son and his sisters settled in a new area. With no other families to marry into, the siblings married each other to continue their lineage. This narrative justified incest as essential for preserving royal bloodlines, a common element in various ancient cultures. Early Buddhist texts neither explicitly condemn nor condone incest. They acknowledge incestuous unions under specific circumstances like lineage survival. Buddhism's approach to incest becomes more intriguing in Jataka tales, stories about the Buddha's previous lives. The Jataka tales offer insights into the treatment of incest within the Buddhist context. These tales, recounting the Buddha's past lives, often include family relationships deemed unconventional by modern standards. A notable tale is that of Prince Mahajanaka, who, after a shipwreck, finds himself in a kingdom where the royal family practices sibling marriage to maintain purity and governance. Additionally, the Kusa Jataka narrates Prince Kusa marrying his half-sister, highlighting the nuanced view of incest within royal duties and lineage. These stories show that incestuous relationships were sometimes seen as necessary for preserving dynastic continuity in historical Buddhism. Such narratives underscore the importance of royal bloodlines and the lengths taken to uphold them. While modern interpretations might view these tales differently, they provide a window into the socio-cultural and historical context of Buddhism, where lineage survival often justified incestuous practices. The Buddha's stance on celibacy among monks and nuns reflects a broader perspective on familial relations. By advocating for a monastic life free from marital ties, he indirectly addressed issues surrounding incest. Ancient Buddhist practices may have been influenced by local customs and socio-political needs. In regions where Buddhism spread, such as Tibet and Southeast Asia, local traditions often melded with Buddhist principles. In Tibet, royal marriages sometimes included incestuous unions to preserve the divine lineage of kings, while in Southeast Asia, particularly in ancient Khmer culture, brother-sister marriages were part of the royal tradition. These practices highlight how regional customs intertwined with the broader Buddhist ethos, showing that the acceptance and rationale for incest varied depending on historical and cultural contexts. The integration of Buddhist principles with regional customs led to a nuanced approach to incest in various Buddhist societies. Classical texts offered a detached view, but practices evolved based on local needs and traditions. In medieval Japan, some Buddhist sects practiced consanguineous unions within monastic communities to maintain spiritual purity and continuity. Buddhism emphasized moral conduct, advocating actions that reduced suffering and promoted harmony. Incest, while sometimes tolerated or practiced, was neither widely celebrated nor condemned. The Buddhist teachings focused on ethical behavior, suggesting that practices like incest were contextualized within the broader ethical and cultural landscape. The origins of incest in Buddhism are best understood through adaptation and integration with societal norms, aiming to maintain harmony and continuity within Buddhist frameworks. Next up, the Jewish Code. Incestuous relationships and their prohibitions have been integral to Jewish law for millennia. The Torah, particularly the Book of Leviticus, is a primary source for these laws. Leviticus chapter 18 explicitly lists prohibited relations, including siblings, parents, and in-laws. Unlike many ancient societies, such as Egyptian and Mesopotamian civilizations, which practiced incestuous marriages among royalty to preserve bloodlines, Jewish incest laws aim to distinguish the community from surrounding nations, emphasizing holiness and moral behavior. Rabbinic interpretations in the Talmud expanded these restrictions, adding layers of communal ethics. The rabbis reinforced Torah laws and adapted them to evolving social contexts. Prohibitions extended to foster and adoptive relationships, reflecting a growing understanding of family dynamics and moral expectations. This evolution highlights Judaism's unique approach to issues of purity, morality, and societal structure. Incest prohibitions in Judaism stem from social, moral, and ritualistic factors. The Genesis story of Cain and Abel underscores early family structures and the significance of family purity. Although the Torah doesn't explicitly condemn Cain for incest, it implies severe consequences for moral violations. Another pivotal instance is Lot and his daughters in Genesis 19. After Sodom and Gomorrah's destruction, Lot's daughters believed they must repopulate the earth, leading them to intoxicate their father and conceive children through him. This act, later condemned in Jewish teachings, exemplifies the chaos and moral decline from incest. Leviticus' priestly code, emphasizing purity and holiness, shows that incest laws aim to preserve community sanctity. These laws evolved through cultural exchanges and interactions with neighboring societies. The Babylonian exile in 6th century BC significantly influenced Jewish legal traditions, introducing new laws and customs that merged into rabbinic Judaism. This blend of native traditions and external influences led to a comprehensive codification of incest laws, ensuring their relevance and application throughout Jewish history. The story of Tamar and Amnon in 2 Samuel 13 highlights the complexities of incest in Jewish history. Amnon, a son of King David, develops an obsessive desire for his half-sister Tamar, manipulates circumstances to be alone with her, and rapes her. This act violates familial trust and triggers severe repercussions within King David's household. The narrative underscores the devastating effects of incestuous relationships, reinforcing the need for strict prohibitions. Beyond biblical narratives, Jewish oral traditions and folklore also shaped incest laws. Talmudic texts compiled between 200 and 500 AD include extensive discussions on permissible and prohibited relationships. The rabbis' deliberations aim to clarify ambiguities and apply ancient laws to contemporary situations. By addressing hypothetical scenarios and real-life cases, the rabbis forged a robust legal framework that governed Jewish communal life. Maintaining family purity and moral integrity remained central to these legal texts. Over centuries, these deliberations evolved, adapting to new social realities while retaining core ethical principles inherent in Jewish law. The concept of gilui arayot, or illicit sexual relations, in the Talmud also governs incestuous relationships. The resilience of rabbinic authority and the uniformity of halacha were crucial in preserving these aspects of Jewish identity. Rabbinic responsa, comprising written decisions and interpretations by rabbis on legal issues, further solidified the understanding of incest laws. Responsa literature addressed unique circumstances faced by dispersed Jewish communities, ensuring that the core principles of incest prohibitions were upheld regardless of geographic or cultural differences. Modern Jewish communities observe ancient laws in diverse ways. The Reform, Conservative, and Orthodox movements approach incest prohibitions with varying stringency. Orthodox Jews strictly follow halakha, ensuring marital unions comply with traditional biblical and rabbinic laws. Conservative Judaism upholds these laws, but allows more lenient interpretations in certain cases. The Reform movement reinterprets these prohibitions to align with contemporary ethics. Despite differences, principles of family purity and moral integrity remain intact across all denominations. These communities engage with their legal and ethical traditions, adapting them to new social realities while rooted in ancient wisdom. Emphasis on preventing incest underscores a commitment to the sanctity of family and community life. Third on our list, Christianity. Incest in Christianity has roots in ancient texts and interpretations. The Bible addresses forbidden relationships, especially in Leviticus chapters 18 and 20, which lay down laws against incest. Early narratives, like Adam and Eve's children, raise questions about humanity's origins and sibling unions for human propagation. Cain and Abel, Adam and Eve's children, would have married their sisters for humanity to continue, indicating early tolerance or unavoidable acceptance of incest in early human lore. The subject becomes more structured with Mosaic law, explicitly prohibiting various incestuous relations to maintain social stability and lineage purity. The Council of Trent was pivotal in defining the Church's stance on marriage and incest. It reinforced bans on incestuous unions and broadened the kinship degrees within which marriage was forbidden, marking close relative marriages as significant moral and doctrinal concerns. These reforms addressed abuses and clarified Catholic doctrine. Biblical interpretations of incestuous relationships were revisited, highlighting their unique contexts. Various synods and councils reaffirmed these prohibitions, ensuring adherence within the Christian community. The medieval period saw further elaboration on incest prohibition, influenced by theological thought and societal needs. Canon law expanded prohibited degrees of relationship, reflecting concerns over moral and hereditary implications. Incestuous relationships were seen as threats to social order and familial stability. Civil authorities began adopting similar restrictions. In some European regions, rulers issued edicts prohibiting incest to align with ecclesiastical directives. Ecclesiastical courts strictly enforced these laws, leading to annulments and penances for violations. This intertwining of civil and church law highlights the significant influence of Christian doctrine on social norms and legal structures. As society evolved, the integration of church teaching on incest into civil law became more evident. The historical Christian stance on incest significantly influences contemporary laws and attitudes. Many Western legal systems reflect principles rooted in centuries of Christian doctrine. Marriage laws in various countries prohibit unions between close relatives, mirroring restrictions established by canon law and expanded by post-medieval church influences. Contemporary Christian denominations uphold these prohibitions, aligning with historical precedent and modern legal standards. The precedent set by early Christian leaders and evolving interpretations has ensured these prohibitions remain integral to both religious and secular understandings of familial relationships. Fourth up, Hinduism. Incest in Hinduism traces back to ancient texts and mythologies. A notable example is from the Rig Veda, one of Hinduism's oldest texts, dating around 1500 BC. It narrates the story of twin siblings, Yama and Yami. Yami expresses her desire to unite with Yama, her brother, symbolizing ritualistic meanings rather than promoting incest. The Vedas, especially the Rig Veda, use symbolic language to convey deeper philosophical meanings. In this context, Yami represents eternal life and cyclical time. Another significant narrative is of Prajapati, the lord of creatures. In the early Vedic period, Prajapati created a daughter whom he desired and pursued. This myth is often interpreted symbolically, reflecting the unity of creation and the creator rather than literal incest. The tale illustrates cosmological principles and the interconnectedness of all life forms. It is crucial to understand these narratives within their cultural and historical context, where they served as allegories for cosmic principles and natural phenomena rather than actual incestuous practices. The Mahabharata, over 2,000 years old, features narratives where incestuous relationships play a pivotal role. Kunti, mother of the Pandavas, bore Karna with the sun god Surya before marrying King Pandu. Karna's hidden identity leads him to fight against his own brothers, highlighting complex moral and social dilemmas around birth and family ties. Mythological stories also feature Krishna, who married his cross-cousin Mitravinda. While cross-cousin marriages are not strictly incest by modern standards, they occupy a gray area in Hindu mythological and social constructs, indicating the diversity and complexity of ancient marriage norms. The context and interpretation of these stories vary widely, revealing the multifaceted nature of kinship and relationships in Hindu mythology. In the Bhagavata Purana, Brahma's love for his daughter Saraswati is depicted. Brahma, a principal Hindu deity, is shown infatuated with Saraswati, whom he created. This narrative symbolizes themes of creation and life's cyclical nature. Brahma's desire for Saraswati signifies the eternal bond between knowledge or Saraswati and creation or Brahma. Incestuous themes appear in various Puranas, where royal siblings marry to preserve lineage purity. For instance, Kashyapa marries his sister Aditi in the Matsya Purana. These stories reflect ancient norms valuing bloodline preservation, offering insights into ancient societal views on family and marriage, emphasizing symbolic and ritualistic aspects over literal practice. In the legend of Shiva and Shakti, they are cosmic siblings and consorts. Shiva and Shakti represent the universe's dynamic forces, embodying masculine and feminine principles. Their union symbolizes the interplay between these forces, essential for creation and balance in the cosmos. This duality and unity underline many Hindu philosophical concepts, emphasizing the importance of balance and harmony between opposing elements. The concept of divine incest appears in the story of Manu, the progenitor of mankind, according to Hindu texts. Manu's attempt to preserve the human race involved pairing his children to perpetuate life, an act seen as necessary in a mythological context. Incest themes in Hindu mythology appear in Lord Vishnu's avatars. For instance, in the Ramayana, some interpretations suggest Sita was a reincarnation of Vedavati who had pledged herself to Vishnu. Thus, Sita's marriage to Rama, an avatar of Vishnu, symbolizes the reunion of the divine couple. This relationship highlights divine destiny and cosmic cycles rather than literal familial bonds. Such narratives are common in folklore, where divine beings transcend human norms, conveying profound spiritual truths and mythological principles integral to Hindu cosmology. Understanding these tales requires delving into their symbolism, which interweaves moral, existential, and cosmological themes, reflecting the rich tapestry of Hindu religious thought. And last but not least, Taoism. In ancient Chinese history, Taoism stands as a significant religious and philosophical tradition. Its roots intersect with the concept of incest, though more symbolically than literally. Early Taoist texts like the Tao Te Ching, written around the 6th century BC by Laozi, use allegories that scholars interpret as metaphors for purity and unity, often illustrated through close familial relationships. In Taoist thought, incest symbolized the unity of all things rather than a practiced behavior. Additionally, Taoist alchemical traditions emphasize the merging of opposites, with the union of yin and yang representing universal harmony, sometimes depicted through familial bonds. These practices were symbolic and rarely enacted in reality. During certain periods, Taoist-influenced rulers promoted these teachings, encouraging familial marriages to maintain lineage unity and purity. Taoism's symbolic use of incest appears in spiritual cultivation and meditation. Certain Taoist sects promoted internal alchemy, harmonizing internal energies. This mirrors the merging of familial elements, suggesting a form of incest within oneself to achieve spiritual unity. The goal was to create inner balance by uniting yin and yang energies within the body. Some Taoist myths recount stories of divine siblings or familial pairs, symbolizing cosmic and spiritual truths. These tales emphasized harmony and achieving higher spiritual states. The symbolic nature of incest in Taoism reveals connections to unity and harmony, rather than promoting actual incestuous practices. The persistence of symbolic representations in Taoist thought has significantly influenced Chinese history and folklore. Royal families sometimes adopted practices reflecting these traditions, such as intra-family marriages, to maintain lineage purity and legitimacy. It is crucial to differentiate between symbolic and literal practices. While incestuous symbolism in Taoism reinforced themes of unity and cosmic balance, it did not promote real-life incest among followers. Over the centuries, these symbols have been reinterpreted within Taoist philosophy and Chinese culture, highlighting the complex interplay between human relationships and cosmic principles. Modern interpretations often view these elements as metaphorical tools for understanding broader spiritual truths rather than endorsements of specific behaviors. This rich tapestry of symbolism continues to intrigue scholars and devotees, underscoring the profound depth and nuance in Taoist teachings and their interpretations of human and cosmic unity. The 20th century normalized certain familial behaviors previously considered taboo. In ancient cultures, incest was often reserved for deities or royalty to maintain a pure bloodline. However, the 20th century recontextualized incest through psychology, medicine, and social norms. The prevalence of incestuous behavior studies increased with Sigmund Freud's psychoanalysis. Freud's Oedipus complex theory suggested children have subconscious romantic feelings towards their opposite-sex parent, impacting the understanding of human sexuality and familial relationships. Medical advancements also highlighted the genetic dangers of incest, shifting public perception to recognize severe health risks. As the 20th century advanced, the legal and social ramifications of incest became more pronounced. Many countries strengthened laws against incest, responding to the growing awareness of its psychological and genetic impacts. In the United States, states adopted stricter measures to prevent incestuous relationships. Psychoanalysis explored family dynamics leading to such relationships, with Carl Jung expanding on Freud's theories to examine archetypes and unconscious factors in incestuous attractions. Socio-cultural shifts, such as the evolving role of women and changing family structures, influenced perceptions and responses to incest. Public health campaigns and education highlighted the dangers and moral implications of incest. By the mid to late 20th century, increased media coverage of incest cases contributed to greater public understanding and condemnation. The combination of legal, psychological, and social perspectives formed a comprehensive approach to addressing incestuous relationships. By the early 20th century, genetics began influencing societal views on incest. The rediscovery of Gregor Mendel's work highlighted the potential for genetic disorders from consanguineous relationships. This scientific perspective evidenced the biological risks of close kin marriages. Reports of genetic anomalies in offspring from incestuous unions led to public outcry and reinforced legal prohibitions. The eugenics movement, aiming to improve genetic quality, gained global traction. Figures like Francis Galton argued against incest, citing its harmful effects on the gene pool. Governments implemented policies and restrictions based on these findings, further stigmatizing incestuous relationships. Educational campaigns informed the public about the genetic consequences of incest, contributing to a broader understanding of its dangers. Literature and media in the 20th century significantly influenced public perception of incest. Vladimir Nabokov's 1955 novel, Lolita, thrust the topic into the cultural spotlight. Although centered on pedophilia, Lolita intertwined themes of inappropriate familial relationships, igniting public debate on societal norms. Psychoanalytic literature further explored incestuous desires, popularizing Freud's theories. Films and television began depicting incest more openly, often within tragic or morally reprehensible contexts, fostering public discourse on the ethics and consequences of incest. Celebrity scandals involving incest received extensive publicity, heightening awareness and condemnation of the practice. By the late 20th century, societal views on incest had significantly transformed. Legal frameworks worldwide became stricter, and the scientific community provided clear evidence of the genetic risks of incestuous relationships. These findings were integrated into public health policies and education, further stigmatizing incest. Concurrently, sociology explored family structure and dynamics' impact on behavior, offering insights into preventing incestuous relationships. Psychological interventions for at-risk families also became more common, addressing underlying issues and preventing future occurrences. Additionally, the media played a crucial role in shaping public discourse by scrutinizing high-profile cases and promoting awareness. Incest, universally condemned, remains a hidden issue today. Legally defined globally, it generally refers to sexual relationships between close relatives. Recent statistics indicate that 10 to 15% of children in some countries may experience incestuous abuse. This distressing number is often underreported due to social stigma and fear. High-profile cases regularly expose such abuse, prompting legislative changes. Developed nations have implemented stringent laws and educational programs to combat incest. Many countries enforce mandatory reporting of suspected child abuse. Despite these measures, incest persists, often within family environments dominated by control and secrecy. Mental health professionals identify significant psychological tolls on victims, including long-term trauma and interpersonal difficulties. In many cases, the cycle of abuse perpetuates through generations. Technological advances play a dual role. While offering new methods of detection and support, technology can also facilitate incestuous exploitation through digital channels. Raising public awareness and continuing education for professionals remain critical. Incestuous relationships highlight complex psychological and social dynamics. Family power imbalances can coerce individuals into abusive situations. Societal taboos make it hard for victims to seek help. Fear of familial and social repercussions often silences victims, perpetuating the abuse cycle. Governments and NGOs work tirelessly to address incest. Public awareness campaigns educate communities about its signs and consequences. Hotlines, shelters, and online resources provide vital support for victims. Legislation evolves to ensure stricter penalties for offenders and better protection for victims. Educational institutions incorporate programs to teach children about boundaries and consent from a young age. Technology will play an increasingly pivotal role. Artificial intelligence and big data could revolutionize how we detect and prevent incestuous abuse. Predictive analytics may identify at-risk individuals, while virtual reality can offer safe spaces for victims to seek counseling. The future of combating incest hinges on societal changes and technological advancements. Internet-based therapy and support groups offer anonymity and accessibility, encouraging victims to come forward. Machine learning algorithms can scan digital communications for red flags, enabling early intervention. International cooperation is crucial for addressing cross-border incest cases. Global treaties and agreements promote sharing best practices and resources. Coordinated efforts between law enforcement, social services, and healthcare providers can foster a more comprehensive approach to prevention and intervention. Cultural shifts are equally vital. Promoting gender equality and empowering individuals to speak out against abuse can create an environment where incest is less likely. Media plays a significant role in destigmatizing the issue and fostering open dialogue. Documentaries, news reports, and social media campaigns can spotlight the issue, making it harder for perpetrators to hide. If everything went as expected, you enjoyed this documentary to its fullest, or you're deep asleep. Both versions are good because both knowledge and sleep work wonders for the human mind. Be sure to watch our other documentaries as well, which should have appeared on the screen by now. If you did enjoy the video, then definitely click the subscribe button as well, so you won't miss our future documentaries. Your best history provider, history but fast.